Ever since I got a Kemper and a bunch of other amp sims that I use all the time now, I really haven't had like amp fever. I haven't had the desire to buy a new amp in a really long time. But one amp that I can't ever really stop thinking about is the Morgan AC20. And now that's available in plugin form thanks to Neural DSP, and I couldn't be happier. So for today's video, I wanted to take a first look at the Morgan amp suite by Neural DSP, and then we can figure out how it does, how does it compare against other Morgan sounding amps, and how does it fit into a song. Most importantly, how does it work in the mix? So I've pulled up a session and we are going to explore it in there and hear how this amp sounds. We'll go through all the 3 different amps that it provides and hear how this thing actually performs. Is it worth buying or is it not? Let's find out. Okay, so I've pulled up our session here. It is a song called Bleed by Vogue Villains. Do check them out, they're awesome. And I've got a pair of DIs right here. Just basic DIs. I think we had a telly for that. And then we have our amps. This is actually what we went with on the record, which was, coincidentally, a Kemper Profile of a Morgan amp. So that's what we got to beat out today using this Neural DSP Morgan amp suite, see how we can do. All right, so let's pull up the amp suite here. And first thing you see, it looks like, if you're familiar with Neural DSP, it looks like all their plugins. The amp design is very cool, but ultimately the layout is the same, which is great. It makes it really quick to operate, in my opinion. We have the Morgan AC20 here, the PR12, and the SW50R. The AC20 is one that I've actually tried in real life, and I loved it. Like, I loved it so much. And that's the one that I've kind of always wanted to own. I just think they're sexy, honestly. Great amps. Sound amazing. And my most used Kemper Profile by far for anything that's not super distorted rock and roll music is an AC20 profile. So it's just something I keep coming back to. So having it in plugin form is like really awesome for me. But I'm excited to check out the PR12 and the SW50R as well. Okay, so first, let's just start dialing in a tone. I wanted to start with this kind of cleaner section, and then we're going to move to a dirtier section later in the video. All right, so I'm just going to loop a section here. That already sounds good. Let's just jump through the amps and hear that. So that's the AC20. Sounds great. Here's the SW50. Also great. Let's try just a little reverb on this. And let's try pushing it. Okay, and then just real quick, we'll reference my original amp sound. Okay, push pretty hard. Reverb's like super similar. Let's go to that. Needs to be a little brighter. And AB again, back to the amp here. Back to the plugin. That's pretty close, eh? Let's hear it in the mix. So that is the DI through the amp suite. Now here's the original. Back to the amp suite. That's crazy similar. No complaints there. Wild. And that's just one. Now, I seem to recall us using an AC20. I could be wrong, but let's just see if we can make that sound similar. I'll probably need to throw on a reverb plugin for that. Sounds pretty good. A little wet maybe. We'll go back to the amp and tweak from there. Let's AB that. So these two don't sound very similar, but it does sound great. Like, I think it sounds fantastic, but this SW50R is just like nailing that job. Versus this. they're hard to tell apart, honestly. I think the amp to me sounds a little more clear, but that is like, I barely started tweaking this, right? And I've just thrown it on. It's like in all the existing plugins that the amp had. And so like it hasn't been tailored the same way, and it already sounds pretty much identical. That's crazy cool. But let's see how it performs in a more rockin' setting where there's some riffage happening. So I'll show you what it sounded like with the original amps. And in the mix, that's like this. So it's not actually that distorted, it's just punchy and like got that telly kind of sound. Really dig it. Now we've got the Morgan amp suite up here. I've just gone back to factory default settings, and you gotta always click stereo if you want it to be able to receive and output a stereo signal. All right, so now let's hear that happening. I'm just gonna solo it so we can dial in a tone. So that's too clean, let's push it. That's cool, but I don't think we're quite there, but I do like it. And I'm gonna kind of rough in a tone with each of the three amps so you can really hear all three and how they respond differently. So this is the AC20. Open up the top end. That's kind of cool. That sounds pretty good to me. I want to just compare that against the original amps. So very different, but A/B again. And again. Both are really cool. Let's hear those in the mix. We'll start with the original amp with the mix. And now back. I still like the original amp sounds we had most. Both of these options have sounded good so far to me though. So now let's head to SW50R and see if this wins this category as well, because it like honestly did the job perfectly for that cleaner section of the song. So let's just try and dial in tone on this now. That sounds pretty good. We'll A/B. So real amp. And now our Neural DSP version. So I don't seem to be able to match these two with any of the amps, but I am getting something really good. So we'll put it in the mix and see which one I like more. Again, starting with the real amp. Okay, that's pretty great. That's how I mixed it. Now we'll go to the Neural DSP rendition. That's cool. Okay, really digging this one now, the PR12. Let's A/B that. And now to the PR12. I might prefer that. It is different. I'm not managing to match these like we were that cleaner section, but I am getting three different results that are all great. But this is probably the one where I'm like, I prefer this right now. It's like, that's pretty great. Let's try going a little brighter. I love it. That's awesome. Now, what I've been doing for all of these is using input distortion, essentially. So rather than using a distortion pedal to drive the amp, I've just been driving their inputs, which I really love on these Morgan style amps. That's like, what's so cool about them to me is how they break up, especially the Morgan AC20. When we look at that, there's nothing to it. It's bare bones, right? It's volume, cut, power. Crank it if you wanted to get angrier. Yeah, you can't really beat that. So just to show you what I mean with that, I'll kind of play with the different types of distortion you can get from just the input and out master volumes on these. So it's kind of like, think of it as like a pre and post gain on a Marshall, or yeah, most amps have 1 or 2 gain stages, and it's either an input or an output. And they both sound cool in Morgan's case when there are multiple options. So we'll start all the way on the left with the AC20 and just listen to how it gets angrier and cooler sounding if you want distortion as I play with the volume knob. So very spanky, very clean. And now I'll just keep turning it up. So right around there, we start getting some serious hair, and let's keep going. Very cool, right? Now let's do it with the PR12. It sounds totally different. Volume over here. It seems like there's a sweet spot around this like 1, 2 o'clock for me, digging that. And now the SW50R is the most interesting because it does have 2 gain stages. We have our level and our volume, so we can play with those like respectively. So I'm just going to default those out, and I'll play with our input level here first, which is the more noticeable distortion, I think, and then we'll play with the volume to show you how those different sounds work, and that you can choose one or the other. You don't have to just always use your preamp gain. Such a cool distortion on this. Now we'll just default that again. It's pretty clean, right? Now we'll push the master. You get this big woolly fat output distortion, and you can blend those to taste. Right, so you can get some really cool, unique sounds out of that. Plus, there's this treble and bass clef knob, which I think is kind of like a dark mode, but it honestly sounds very cool, like especially with the Morgan AC20 here. If we just crank it, and then I click that, we get this cool, like, woolly mammoth fuzz tone almost. It's very interesting. So aside from it just sounding awesome, which it clearly does, I'm sure you'd all agree by this point, we've got some other features. We've got a gate. You can just toggle it on or off, or adjust the threshold, which is very appreciated. I find that can clean up some of the tracks that get sent to me by maybe less experienced bands that are tracking themselves. There's a full transpose, so if you want to get crazy. You got that. 12 steps either way. Totally cool. You've also got a variety of stomps. So at the input stage, you have a compressor, 2 overdrives actually, as well as a trem pedal. I like trem, so I like seeing that there. And then on the output of the effects, you have a cool stereo delay, as well as a reverb. So those are both there. The delay is like a tape saturation kind of style, it seems, but you have ping pong. It's kind of fully fleshed out, like most of the Neural DSP plugins seem to be. They got the reverb and the delays pretty figured out, I would say. Love that. It's also a graphic EQ, if that's your thing. And then in the cab section, this is a little bit different than I expected. I mean, it's mostly the same in that you click this, you got your different mics there, you can load custom IRs if you want. The Morgan cab is great, but the only maybe complaint I have is that it's just a single Morgan cab, a single speaker essentially. So when I click between these amps, only the head is changing, and it's all going through that same cab, which isn't actually a problem. It's just that I expected to get 3 cabs, I guess. I could have read the print. But yeah, it just from buying other packs, I expected 3 different cabs to like correspond with the amp heads, which is just more options, which is something that I like. That said, this does sound good, and I can always just add my own custom IRs if I wanted as well. So not a big deal in any way. So now I'll show you all the different mics on this cab section so you can hear the difference there. But I want you to note that it defaulted. Let's just double check that. We'll go factory default, make sure we're in stereo, and go to the cab section. Yes, it defaults with both mics on the IR. So we're running 2 different IRs, a dynamic SM57 IR, and then a condenser one, like Neumann 184 IR at the same time. So just so you can really hear the changes, I'm going to turn that off, and it's just going to then default to 57 as our only IR. So the IRs are matching in this case. And now let's do that in context, because I think that's really when you know you've got the right cab. And it's amazing how much of a difference a cab and IR can make, or mic can make. It can make more of a difference than the amp head itself. So let's try this. So that's curious, like the 409 there, I liked it when we were auditioning it in solo, but I hated it on its own, or in the mix there, like it sounded awful, right? Like the 57 sounds good. The 409's just like no mids, it's like lows and a lot of sizzle, and you can't make out the definition. No good. Let's try the 421. Okay, this U47 and the 57 are definitely my favorite. Let's try the U47 again. And the 57. Yeah, maybe I like this 47, I think. And then if I thought I was missing a little bit of that bite, I'd just throw another 57 in there. That sounds pretty awesome to me. Yeah, home run with this one, Neural DSP. I like all of their stuff. I own, I think, 3 of their suites now, this being the 3rd, I'm pretty sure. They're a great company. They do really good work. Obviously, they're the ones that originally kind of convinced me that you could change from real amps or even like a Kemper to just using plugins, and you absolutely can. I mean, amps are great. They're fun. They're loud in a room, and you know, live maybe they have their place, but mixing records now, even tracking records, God, we're lucky. This is so nice having, like, this is like tens of thousands of dollars worth of amps, and I got it for like $100-something bucks. Can't beat that. Go check it out. They have a free trial if you want. Not a sponsored video in any way. I just bought it for myself and thought I would explore it with you and see what you thought. It's definitely a great amp. I could see this being one of my most used, if not my most used, in my rock genre mixing now. Loved it. If you like this, please let me know down in the comments. And if you got any questions on anything like amp related, amp sim related, recording, Pro Tools, comment it down below. I want to know what you need to learn, and I'll make videos for you. No question is too simple. So go ahead and just comment down below. Be happy to try and help. And yeah, give a subscribe. And if you want a free mixing workshop to level up your mixes, there's a link in the description of this video. Totally free. Don't have to buy any plugins or anything. Check that out. Adios. Bye.